All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jules of Thought, and today is March the 31st, 2023. I have actually gone live and put up a video just earlier this morning where I was addressing the tone deaf nature of attorney Archibald, where he actually had the audacity to call into question whether Kay and Larry Woodcock were J.J. Vallow's grandparents. It's crazy. Now, I have to say, I apologize. My mouth overloaded my behind, and I misspoke. I called attorney Archibald, Jim Archibald, I called him Abercrombie. I actually made a cartoon for something else with Abercrombie and Boyce. So I just had a major brain fart. And so I apologize about that. And it either means I need to go shopping or I'm just weary with all of these various cases that we have going on and the depth of um, a depth of information that everyone in the true crime genre we're all grappling with. I laughed at Gazella K from True Crime Grizzly channel. She's the same. She's like, oh my God, this case is too much. It's, she's got a little meme up waving the white flag. So Gisela K, I feel your pain. I literally called Jim, I'm going to do it again. Jim Archibald, I literally called him Abercrombie, as in Abercrombie and Fitch. But at least I was thinking Abercrombie and Boyce. So my apologies. Thank you guys for being kind. This case is crazy. There is just so much information, so much heartache. So I think that I think Archibald, I think he is somehow kind of a bit sadistic. He's enjoying this power that he seems to have with Judge Boyce. And I don't know that Judge Boyce, I'm not sure that he has the ability to stand up to Archibald. I really kind of think he may be a little bit intimidated by Lori Vallow's defense team. Or someone else is behind the scene messing with Judge Boyce's head. I really was very surprised earlier. Boyce actually says, no, I don't really know what all these connections are, what the family roles are, but maybe you guys can kind of enlighten us. And I felt a little bit frustrated because they did not really make the case that Kay is absolutely the biological grandmother. J.J. Vallow was born in Lake Charles. His parents are Dennis Todd Trahan and Mandy Ledger. Those are the two biologicals. Dennis Todd Trahan is Kay Woodcock's child, her biological child. Kay Woodcock, Mr. Archibald, and Judge Boyce, Kay Woodcock is the biological grandmother, not a stepmother. None of, I mean, stepmothers are just as valuable. Don't get me wrong, but I just really felt like this was misrepresented, and this is critical in terms. I mean, it is at the heart right now of Kay and Larry's identity, because this is their child, this is their baby, this is the baby that they cared for, and they made a difficult decision to let the child be raised by a younger family member, and they never removed themselves as grandparents. They retained that role. It was Dennis Todd Trahan that said, okay, I think it's better, obviously I'm not well and I'm not capable of taking care of this child. And so we want to let healthy parents, Charles Vallow, take responsibility for JJ and raise him. But again, Kay never said, I'm not his grandmother. She is biologically the child's grandmother. All right. So JJ was born May the 25th, 2012 in Lake Charles. At the time that JJ was born, he was placed in the custody of the state of Louisiana because his parents were not able to care for him. It doesn't matter why. That makes no difference. It was just determined that for the safety of the infant, the child needed to be placed in the care of the state. And so then it was at that time that Larry and Kay Woodcock are made guardians. And so they collect JJ from the hospital and take him home. So the state is still watching over JJ and making sure that he's being treated well and that he had a lot of medical needs. And so the state's trying to do the right thing. But Larry and Kay have him. They pick him up from the hospital. They take him home. This is her biological grandchild. And so then June of the same year, Louisiana grants custody and caregiver status to Larry and Kay to take care of JJ. And then you fast forward to February of 2013, and Charles Vallow, who would be JJ's biological uncle, he agrees to take the child and he adopts JJ. He becomes the adopted father, but he is the biological uncle of the child. So at the time of the adoption, Charles Vallow is married to Lori Vallow, and she became the adoptive mother. Not the biological, but the adoptive. From 2014 to 2016, JJ lived in Hawaii with his adoptive parents. During that time, the Woodcocks continued to have constant contact with their grandson, JJ. They traveled to Hawaii on at least 6 occasions with the intention of seeing their grandson. In 2016, Charles and Lori moved back to Phoenix, Arizona, and then they separated in January of 2019. Upon separation, Charles Vallow, who is biologically related to Kay and JJ, he retains physical custody of JJ, and they moved to Houston in March of 2019. When on a visit to see JJ in Mesa, Arizona, Charles Vallow was murdered by Alex Cox. After the murder of Charles Vallow, JJ was then in the custody of Lori Vallow, and then it was only a few months later, from July to September, he's murdered. And that's where we are today, that we know. We all have our ideas about who did this and why, but I think we all agree that on some level, some way, some shape, form, or fashion, Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, Alec Cox, Melanie Gibb, Melanie Pulowski, Zulema Pastenis, and their respective mates, David Warwick, Ian Pulowski, I feel like I'm leaving somebody else, that this group that were doing unusual and strange things like conjuring earthquakes and killing zombies and judging people for their lightness and their darkness and who gets to live and who gets to die. This group they're all doing this together. And as a result, 2 children die, JJ and Tylee. Other people die as well, but specific to JJ today, he dies. So Charles dies in July. 9 months later, JJ dies. So I don't know, Mr. Archibald. I'm thinking Lori Vallow is not really, her care of this child is not really consistent with the definition of mother. What do you think? I think the actions and the behaviors of Kay and Larry Woodcock are more consistent with the formal definition of mother than what your client did. Let's see. Now then, as a result of Judge Boyce's insane ruling, or not ruling, but position that he doesn't think that he should allow Kay and Larry to be in the courtroom because they could be potential witnesses and they're going to be disregarded as family. They're just going to be disregarded as grandparents to this child. This is her biological grandchild. I cannot stress this enough. There are grandparents' rights and they have legal standing and they matter. So I don't know if someone is misleading Judge Boyce or if he's just that shallow and unable to make a connection with the reality. Now, we are going to talk about Mr. Archibald because he's kind of revealed himself to be a bit sadistic or just perhaps just completely tone deaf. Maybe he doesn't have any awareness that he's a cold jerk. There's another case I'm going to present in just a minute that might reflect just how cold Mr. Archibald may actually be. Now, as a result of this really, what I think is an obscene move by the court to keep Kay and Larry out of the courtroom, thankfully, they have hired an attorney. It's actually an attorney that's working with Xana Kernodle's family, and his name is Shannon L. Gray. So Shannon Gray is representing Larry and Kay Woodcock, who are the biological grandparents of the victim, J.J. Vallow, in the above referenced matter. So in case number CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow Daybell, we now have a legal document that identifies Kay as biological grandmother and Larry as grandfather. Shannon Gray makes this memorandum in support of the motion to allow victims to be present at all criminal justice proceedings and designate a personal representative for the immediate family of J.J. Vallow. The court currently has before it a motion by defense counsel that would be the tone deaf Archibald or Abercrombie or asshole, whatever we want to call him. They want to, Archibald wants to exclude Larry and Kay Woodcock from being present in the courtroom during the trial. As counsel for the Woodcocks, Mr. Shannon Gray was hired today and was not able to be present for oral arguments on the matter. And what are the relevant facts? And so I've just kind of gone through, the facts of the dates and the times and, how they should be considered, his grandparents. They have maintained constant contact. Kay and Larry have maintained constant contact with their grandson throughout his life. The Woodcocks are the closest biological relatives that JJ has, other than his father or his biological father, Dennis Trahan, who is still alive, and some aunts, uncles, and cousins on Charles Vallow's side of the family. JJ also has some adoptive brothers. JJ's biological mother, Mandy Leager, has passed away. Then he goes on to cite the applicable law. And it says, it is very clear that victims' rights in criminal cases are governed by Article 1, Section 22 of the Idaho State Constitution and Title 19, Chapter 53 of the Idaho Statutes. These are basic rights that are given to all victims of crimes in Idaho. The statute and the articles of the Constitution are meant to be a guide for the courts when it comes to addressing victims' rights. Idaho State Constitution, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 22, Rights of Crime Victims. A crime victim, as defined by the statute, has the following rights. 1, to be treated with fairness, respect, dignity, and privacy throughout the criminal justice process. And so far, I think, Judge Boyce, that you have failed this family. To be have timely disposition of the case, to prior notification of trial court, appellate, and parole proceedings, and upon request, to information about the sentence, incarceration, and release of the defendant. And then 4, to be present at all criminal justice proceedings. That's a victim's right statute. To be present at all criminal justice proceedings. Under Title 1953-06-5, the definition of victim is defined as an individual who suffers direct or threatened physical, financial, or emotional harm as a result of the commission of a crime. This definition is enhanced in 19-53-06-3 in stating, the provisions of this section shall apply equally to the immediate families of homicide victims. The court may designate a representative from the immediate family to exercise these rights on behalf of a deceased. Did you hear that? The judge has the ability to designate a representative from JJ's immediate family to exercise those rights that are outlined in this statute on crime victims. Under both the Idaho State Constitution and the Idaho statutes, the crime victim has the following rights: to be treated with fairness, dignity, respect, and privacy throughout the criminal justice process, be permitted to be present at all criminal justice proceedings, and to a timely disposition of the case. All right. So they go on and they outline some facts and people in attendance and that kind of thing. But I think it's clear on multiple levels, Kay and Larry Woodcock have the right to be in that courtroom. They have the right as a biological grandparent, as a representative to JJ Vallow. They have the ability to do this. So I will say, so people, Judge Boyce received a list of those in attendance, non-legal issues. Oh, no, I don't want to read through that. Okay, so it will be interesting to watch and see how this plays out, where we end up. I'm just thrilled that they were able to get a competent attorney instead of hoping that, the prosecution would know what to say. They didn't even really make the case that she is in fact the biological grandmother of this child. So this is a really good development, and I'm just heartbroken for this family. I just am more than really being heartbroken for the family. The other part, well, not more than, but the equally as important is just the egregious, in my opinion, which isn't really worth much, I guess, just an opinion like yours. But I think it's absolutely egregious what this Archibald joker is up to, and why he would behave this way. Honestly, why he would behave this way. He has absolutely outright said that they're probably not going to call any witnesses. Now that the death penalty is off the case, they're not going to call any witnesses. This is essentially, as far as I can see it, this is this is his um this is Rob Wood's case to lose. They're not going to mount a so-called defense. They're just going to let this joker sink and swim, I suppose. Now, so Abercrombie, well, is he a really principled guy? Does he seem like the kind of guy that, he just wants people's civil rights to be in order and for, people to make decisions and choices that are principled and honest and ethical? Well, maybe not. Listen to this story. It's about a woman named Angie Dodge. Nearly 25 years ago, Angie was found dead after suffering a horrific rape. Her killer was supposedly, going to jail. Now, the person that they now know did it is a guy named Brian Drips. And the person representing this disgusting monster is who? Jim Archibald. So, Drips has been free for the last 20 something years. Okay. There was another guy though, Christopher Tapp. Christopher Tapp has spent the last 20 years in prison for the rape and murder of Angie Dodge. That's right. Not only was it Drips that killed her, he's been walking free for the last 20 years, and he allowed another man to serve his time. Christopher Tapp has been in prison serving time after being accused and found guilty of the rape and death of Angie Dodge. So they ended up getting some, they had DNA. They found some DNA on Angie's body, and it's taken this long for the technology to catch up. And so in 2019, investigators were able to use this DNA to tie Drips to the murder of Angie Dodge. Now, during the whole sentencing victim impact, stage of this, Dodge's mother, Angie's mother, said in a victim impact statement, she said, "You," talking about Archibald's client, "you have shattered our family. There is no way that we will ever pick up these pieces again. You, Brian Drips, you deserve eternal hell." Two of Angie's brothers also share their anguish, Todd and Roger Dodge. Todd laid out on the floor a large graphic image of the crime scene as he gave his tear-filled victim impact statement. "That crime scene is speaking, Your Honor. Angie is crying out, asking you to hear her voice, hear her words of how this crime impacted her. The size of the photo pales in comparison to the enormity of the situation and the enormity of the horrific nature of Mr. Drips' actions." Remember, Mr. Drips is Jim Archibald's client. So the other brother, Todd, describes the actions of Drips. He says it's like Drips dropped an atomic bomb not only in the family, on Angie's family, but their entire community. He again calls Drips the pure definition of evil. Roger gets up and he says, "I cannot believe how long my sister has been lying in that casket. I can't believe how long she has been in that grave, and she never should have been there." So what started all of this? Well, this was a multi-decades long investigation, trial, and it all began June 13th, 1996. Angie was only 18 years old, and she was living in a little apartment in Idaho Falls. One day, she simply doesn't show up for work. She's got a couple of coworkers that care about her, and so they go and check on her. The coworkers find her body, and later, the investigators determine, yeah, she's been brutally raped and murdered. During the sentencing hearing, the prosecutors with the Idaho Attorney General's office again described Angie's body. Her throat had been slit, she was nearly decapitated, and she literally bled to death from multiple knife wounds throughout her body. The police collected evidence, including DNA, and the samples showed that there was a single unknown suspect that was responsible for the brutal rape and murder of Angie Dodge. For months, police tried to solve the crime but could not pin down onto a suspect. Then in January 1997, investigators named a suspect. He was 20-year-old Christopher Tapp. The DNA did not match Tapp's, and police theorized multiple people must have been involved in the crime. Through what experts and Tapp's attorneys say were coerced confessions, Tapp admitted to the crime and gave the names of other alleged participants whose DNA also did not match. Eventually, Tapp came out and he asserted his innocence, and that began a long fight, a battle to clear his name. Carol Dodge, the mother of Angie, stood by Chris Tapp's side and said he did not do this. Investigators began making serious progress on the case in 2019 by using new genetic genealogy tools. By examining family connections with the DNA recovered at the scene, DNA experts identified a number of people who could have been related to the case. And among them was Drips, Jim Archibald's client. Drips, who police learned at the time of the murder and rape was living right across the street from Angie Dodge, well, he had never been interviewed by police. On May the 10th, 2019, investigators drove to Caldwell, where Drips was living, and they collected a DNA sample from a cigarette butt that he threw into the road. Detectives ran into the road, collected the sample, and they sent it off to the Idaho State Police Lab. In 24 hours, the lab returned with a positive match. Investigators then almost immediately took Drips into custody. It was about 5 days later. They took him into custody. And during questioning, he then confessed to raping and killing Angie Dodge 23 years earlier. He was arrested and booked into the Canyon County Jail before authorities brought him to Idaho Falls, and he's been at the Bonneville County Jail ever since. When Drips, being represented by Jim Archibald, pleaded guilty to the crimes in February, he described being on cocaine and alcohol when he went into Angie's apartment with the intent to rape her. He said he had a pocket knife but did not intend to murder her. However, well, it just happened. You know how that goes. He said he didn't remember almost decapitating her. He also would not deny that he did it. Tripp says, I just wish I could do over that night. I am sorry. I know you will never forgive me, but I am sorry. Co-defense attorney Elisa Massoth painted a picture of Drift's life, mentioning his adoption, joining the United States Marine Corps, and a career in construction. The father of three spent nearly 23 years taking care of 3 children from a failed marriage. When you look at this period of time and you take the timeline and you pare it down, we're looking at a window of time that was a horrible window of time that was about 20 minutes on one day. In the years after, in that 20 minutes, meaning, don't judge his whole life because of what he did in that 20 minutes time, which was to rape and murder an 18-year-old girl. In the years after Dodge's murder, Dripp's health continued to decline. from a heart attack Drips had in November while in the Bonneville County Jail to a lifelong chronic conditions of many different manner and sort. The co-defense attorney, who was one Jim Archibald, well, he asserts that Drips receiving a 20-year minimum sentence likely equates to the rest of his life. Archibald says, when talking about his declining health, he always thought this was God's way of punishing him for what he did to Angie. So I can tell the court that he feels bad. He's been feeling really bad. He felt horrible and so remorseful about what happened. Do you believe that? Idaho Deputy Attorney General Jessica Kuhn disagreed and said Drips, living 23 years of life, knowing he had killed Angie and never coming forward. And that leaves her questioning, Jim, Mr. Archibald, or Abercrombie, or whatever the hell, asshole. Where is the remorse, Jim? You have the audacity to stand up in front of this court and say this about a young woman who had her life taken from her. Where's this remorse that you speak of? Kuhn finishes by saying, well, he knew someone was serving time for his crime, and yet every day this joker woke up and refused to take accountability for his actions. So Archibald is saying, oh, don't judge my client. He's been feeling so bad. He got sick and he thought that was God being mean to him because of what he did. And so be sorry for him. He's really sorry what he did. He didn't mean it. Not only did he take your client, Jim, not only did he steal the life of an 18-year-old girl, not only did he torture her in the minutes before she died, what you think is remorse, he was able to have children, have career, go into the military, all the while knowing there was another man in prison for 23 years serving for the crime that he committed. That is Lori Daybell's attorney. I don't know. I think there's something about defense attorneys that can't lie, This is very uncomfortable. Oh, he felt so sorry. He felt so bad. Oh, okay. What about the person that lost, 23 years of their life? If your client didn't give a damn about an 18-year-old traumatized girl, did he care about the grown man that had 23 years of his life robbed from him? Do you care about that? Because it doesn't look like Drips nor his attorney Archibald had any care or concern about the innocent people involved. And I'm seeing that same pattern of behavior in what's going on in Idaho today. That his client not only seems to be allegedly a part of a conspiracy to end the lives of two children because she wanted to run away and have some sex-crazed fantasy of being queen of 144,000, but you have the audacity, the only people that were trying to sound the alarm on the missing children. Where are JJ and Tylee? Where are JJ and Tylee? Where are JJ and Tylee? The only people was the biological grandmother and grandfather, Kay and Larry Woodcock. But this joker who says, oh no, this man is sorry that he did this. He let a man spend 23 years in prison on top of taking the life of an 18-year-old girl. It feels really it feels sadistic. It feels like there's no awareness for doing the right thing. There's plenty of defense attorneys out there that are fulfilling their role as defense counsel, and they're principled. They're principled and they're honest. This, though, doesn't feel so. To mislead the judge about who Kay and Larry Woodcock are in an effort to be petty and small, maybe he's just trying to make some brownie points with Lori Vallow. Maybe they got a little something on the side that's now been, stirred up. Whatever the motivation was, it was wrong. It was wrong. At the end of the hearing, Tingy upheld the binding plea agreement reached during mediation between the defense team and prosecutors. In addition to Drip's 20-year sentence, the Idaho Department of Corrections has available space. Drip will also stay in a special medical unit. You look at crimes like this, and it's impossible to quantify how much damage has been caused. It's widespread. And like Todd Dodge's comment said, it's chaos. The loss of my sister, it's chaos for a lifetime. Drips had to pay a $10,000 in fine. Brent Dodge, another one of Angie's brothers, told East Idaho News after sentencing, I would describe it as probably a milestone in the path to healing, but we're not there yet. Over the past 25 years, this case and the Dodge family have become interwoven in our agency and our community at large, as evidenced by the impactful statements made by her family today in court. Angie's memory will live on with her family, our community, and certainly with the Idaho Falls Police Department. So there's no parallels between what happened to Angie and the demise of JJ and Tylee and Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell. But I think it shows kind of this just lack of awareness that the attorney Archibald seems to have. He just doesn't seem to be this idea of keeping the biological grandparents out of the courtroom. It really doesn't even serve any function. It really does nothing. It doesn't help or hurt either side. It just seems petty and mean and made like he did it in a smug and sadistic way at the suggestion of his little friend, Lori Vallow.